If we're being honest, most people on your team haven't received meaningful feedback over 30 days or even longer. Not a performance review, feedback. The kind that tells them exactly what they're doing well and what needs to change. Your CSRs, your account managers, your producers, they're handling renewals, navigating claims, managing those difficult conversations. And most of them are operating without a clear signal about whether they're on track or off course. That silence isn't neutral. It says what you're doing doesn't matter enough to comment on. That's not a message that builds performance. Feedback most agencies do give falls into two categories. Generic praise, great job on that renewal. What was great? What should they repeat? They don't know, so they can't. Or corrective feedback that only shows up when something goes wrong. The only time that manager says something specific is when there's a problem. That trains your team to associate feedback with failure. And people who associate feedback with failure stop wanting to hear from you. Every leader needs 4 types of feedback in their toolkit. Each one does some different work. Recognition, telling someone what they did well so they can do it again. Redirection, something needs to change and you're naming it specifically. Coaching, helping someone build towards a future capability. And calibration, confirming that your standard and their standard actually match. Most managers are going to just use 1 or 2 of these, usually redirection and an occasional generic recognition. The full toolkit changes how your team experiences you. Now here's how you make any of these land. Remember the SBI model I talked about in a previous video? Situation, behavior, impact? This is the structure that turns vague feedback into something people can actually use. Here's what it sounds like for recognition. In the Davidson call yesterday, that's the situation. When you repeated back to the client the concern before offering a solution, that's the behavior. It completely shifted the tone. He went from frustrated to collaborative and we kept the account. That's the impact. That's not great job. That tells your team member exactly what they did, why it worked, and what to repeat. For redirection, the structure is the same. On the Carter pre-renewal meeting last Thursday, the file wasn't complete when the client called. They left the conversation feeling like we hadn't prepared. I need the file review done 48 hours before every client-facing meeting going forward, and I need that starting this week. Specific, behavioral, connected to the impact. One clear ask. That changes performance without damaging the relationship. Coaching sounds different because the goal is different. You're not correcting something that went wrong, you're building something that isn't there yet. On the Mendez renewal last week, you handled the coverage questions cleanly, but you didn't surface the umbrella conversation, even though their exposure has clearly changed since last year. That's the next level of this role, leading with the coverage gap, not waiting for the client to ask. Let's pick 3 accounts on your book this month where you'll run that conversation through. After each one, we'll sit down for 15 minutes and we'll talk about how it went, how you framed it, and what we can improve upon. That's coaching. It's naming a specific capability, creating reps, building in feedback. You're not telling them they failed, you're telling them where they're going to go next. Calibration is the one managers skip entirely. That's usually the reason standards quietly drift. You say, I pulled the last 5 proposals you sent out. 3 of them didn't include the loss run summary. On this team, that summary goes on every account over $50,000 in premium, every time. I want to make sure we're aligned on that because I think we're reading the standard differently. Walk me through how you decided which ones got it and which ones didn't. That's calibration. You're not assuming they ignore the standard. You're checking whether the standard you think exists is the standard they're operating from. Half the time, you'll find out they're taught something different by the person who trained them, or the standard was never made explicit in the first place. You can't fix that with redirection. You fix it by getting on the same page. Now, lastly, my unsolicited advice on annual reviews. The worst feedback mechanism ever invented. 12 months of observations compressed into one anxious conversation delivered alongside a compensation decision. Nothing about that design produces behavioral change. If someone on your team finds out in December that they've been doing something wrong since March, you didn't fail back in December, you failed in March and April and every month after that when you said nothing. Feedback belongs in your weekly rhythm, in one-on-ones, in the 5-minute conversation after a client call. It should be so normal that nobody tenses up when you say, can I share something I noticed? The agencies I've worked with that have the strongest cultures didn't get there with better annual reviews. They got there because their leaders made feedback a daily discipline. Recognition when it's earned, redirection when it's needed, coaching when someone's ready, and calibration when standards drift. That's the playbook, not complicated, but it requires you to pay attention, be specific, and say something even when it's not easy to. Your team is waiting to hear from you, not once a year, now. If you found this helpful, click the subscribe button for more leadership videos.